Welcome back to Bible Truth Diggers, where we explore powerful stories hidden within the Bible. Today, we are diving into the story of Nehemiah and how God delayed the answers to his prayers. It was Kislev, the ninth month of the Hebrew calendar, a season when the chill of winter pressed against the earth, mirroring the heaviness in Nehemiah's soul. In the grandeur of the Persian palace at Susa, Nehemiah served as the king's cupbearer. On the surface, his life appeared secure, even privileged. He stood in close proximity to power, trusted with the king's very life. But behind the royal robes and polished goblets, Nehemiah bore an unseen burden. His heart belonged not to the splendor of Persia, but to a land far away, a land he had never truly seen but deeply loved. But before we dive in, if this is your first time of checking out the channel, please subscribe, like, and share our videos to spread the hidden truth with others. One fateful day, Nehemiah's brother, Hanani, arrived from Judah. Eager for news, Nehemiah hurried to him. "Tell me," he urged, "how are the Jews who survived the exile? How is Jerusalem?" Hanani's face fell. His eyes, heavy with sorrow, met Nehemiah's. "The survivors are in great trouble and disgrace," he said. "The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates are burned with fire." Nehemiah's breath caught. His legs felt weak beneath him. The words pierced his heart like a dagger. Jerusalem, the city of his ancestors, lay in ruins. The once mighty walls, symbols of strength and protection, were now piles of rubble. The gates, once bustling with life and trade, were nothing more than ashes. That night, as the palace slept, Nehemiah sat alone in his quarters. The weight of the news pressed down on him. His chest tightened, and tears streamed down his face. The sorrow wasn't just for the city, but for the people, vulnerable and disgraced. Their hope shattered like the stones of the wall. Nehemiah didn't hide his anguish. He wept openly, his sobs echoing in the stillness of the night. But his grief didn't lead to despair. It drove him to the only place he knew to find hope, the presence of God. Falling to his knees, he lifted his tear-streaked face to heaven and began to pray. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and obey his commands, hear my prayer. Listen to the cry of your servant, praying day and night for your people, Israel." Nehemiah didn't shy away from confession. "We have sinned against you," he admitted. "I and my family have sinned. We have acted wickedly toward you and have not obeyed the commands you gave through Moses." But then, his tone shifted. Clinging to the promises of God, Nehemiah reminded him of his covenant. "Remember, Lord, you said that if we return to you, even if we are scattered to the farthest horizon, you would gather us and bring us to the place you have chosen as a dwelling for your name." Finally, Nehemiah made his request. It wasn't bold or demanding, but humble and heartfelt. "Give your servant success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man." The man Nehemiah referred to was no ordinary individual. It was King Artaxerxes, the most powerful ruler of the known world. And Nehemiah knew what he was asking was risky. Days turned into weeks. Kislev gave way to Tevet, and then Shavat. The cold of winter began to thaw, but Nehemiah's prayer remained unanswered. Every day, Nehemiah served the king, carrying his grief like a hidden wound. In the Persian court, displaying sadness could be interpreted as an insult to the king or even treason. Nehemiah had to mask his pain, keeping his emotions tightly bottled. But though the heavens seemed silent, Nehemiah didn't give up. Each night, he returned to his knees. His prayers became a rhythm, a steady drumbeat of faith. He didn't know when or how God would answer, but he believed that he would. Imagine the tension Nehemiah lived with, knowing that the fate of his people and his homeland depended on divine intervention, yet being powerless to act until God opened the door. For months passed. It was now Nisan, the the first month of the Hebrew calendar, a time of spring and renewal. But for Nehemiah, the weight of waiting had not lessened. That day began like any other. Nehemiah stood before King Artaxerxes, pouring wine into the royal cup. He took a deep breath, steadying his hands. But as he approached the king, something was different. The sorrow Nehemiah had kept hidden for months now showed on his face. The king noticed immediately. His piercing gaze settled on Nehemiah. "Why does your face look so sad when you are not ill? This can be nothing but sadness of heart." Nehemiah's blood ran cold. The room seemed to hold its breath. In the Persian court, such an observation wasn't merely personal, it was dangerous. The wrong response could lead to punishment, even death. But Nehemiah didn't crumble under the king's scrutiny. Instead, he sent up a quick, silent prayer. "God, give me the words." Then, with a deep bow, he replied, "May the king live forever. Why should my face not look sad when the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire?" The king leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "What is it you want?" Nehemiah's heart pounded. This was it, the moment he had prayed for. Taking another breath, he answered, "If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, send me to the city in Judah where my ancestors are buried so that I can rebuild it." The silence that followed was deafening. Nehemiah could feel his pulse in his ears as he waited for the king's response. Then, to his astonishment, the king nodded. Not only did he grant Nehemiah's request, but he also gave him letters of safe passage, supplies, and an armed escort to ensure his journey would succeed. When Nehemiah arrived in Jerusalem, the sight of the ruins was overwhelming. The city was in worse shape than he had imagined. But he didn't let despair take hold. Instead, he called the leaders and the people together, rallying them with a vision of hope. "Come," he urged, "let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace." The work began immediately, but it wasn't without challenges. Enemies mocked and threatened them, trying to disrupt their progress. But Nehemiah was undeterred. He prayed fervently, stationed guards, and encouraged the workers to press on. Day by day, stone by stone, the wall began to rise. In just 52 days, the wall was completed, a feat so miraculous that even their enemies recognized that God's hand was upon them. Nehemiah's story isn't just about rebuilding a wall. It's about the power of prayer, the importance of patience, and the faithfulness of God. For 4 months, Nehemiah waited. He didn't rush ahead of God or try to force his own plans. Instead, he trusted that God's timing was perfect, even when the wait felt unbearable. Are you in a season of waiting? Like Nehemiah, are you holding on to a prayer that feels unanswered? Remember, delays are not denials. The same God who answered Nehemiah's prayer in Nisan is the God who hears your prayers today. So, don't lose heart. Keep praying. Keep trusting. And when the time is right, God will move in ways you can't imagine. If you were blessed by this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share our videos to spread the hidden truth with others. God bless you.